Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I am thrilled that you're here. Hey, in this episode, I want to talk about a couple of things. So, one of the biggest things around scaling your expertise and becoming a scalable expert is how do you package your intellectual property? How do you package what it is that you do that makes you an expert at your thing? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this from a big picture perspective because I think that one of the biggest sort of challenges that people have, other than like, what do I package? How does that work? How do I know when I'm an expert? All those kinds of things, which we've talked about on prior episodes. One of the biggest things is really understanding that once you get to the place where you have that expertise and you have a sort of a repeatable pattern for how you help people get results. You don't have to have it defined yet, but there's probably some way that you somewhat consistently help people go from the problem that they have to the result that they are desiring as you are working as a service provider, as an expert, as a freelancer, as a consultant, however you're doing it, right? So you're already in the game of being an expert at something. The trick is, how do you get to be an expert and help more and more people without it maxing out your time and your calendar? Because what happens is that we become experts and people seek us out, which is amazing. And so then we all of a sudden are so busy, we do not have any more space on our calendar. And so the better we get, the busier we get. So how do we unravel that? That's the question that every expert is asking who is trying to scale a business. Is how do you unravel your expertise from your calendar, but still remain in your expertise, still remain doing the things that you love to do? Most of us don't start our business so that we can eventually be just managing all of the people who are doing the cool stuff that we want done in the business, right? And so how do you remain the expert, grow your expertise, grow your authority in the market without it maxing out your time? That's really the question that we're always looking to answer as we grow and scale our businesses. So first of all, one of the key things that you need to do is look at your expertise a little bit differently. And that's when we talk about packaging your IP, packaging whatever it is that's your sort of way or path or structure for how you help your customers go from point A to point B. Now, this is more than just, well, this is how I do it, and here are the steps that are involved with it. In 80% of my customers, I go from here to here, and this is how I do all of the work. That's awesome, and that's what you need to really figure out as you look at what is the pattern for how you're doing your work. How do you look at repeating that for your customers? There are a lot of different things involved with that, which I'm not going to get into in today's episode, but that's the first thing that you need to do is see that pattern. Then what a lot of times people do is, oh, I have that pattern. I'm going to give it a name and call it Tara's methodology, right? And my methodology is how I take somebody from point A to point B and all of the steps and all the things in the middle, right? We call that your IP. We call that your signature pathway, so that you are packaging your IP into something that can be tangible and live beyond you and your time. Once you do that and you can make it into something that is packaged, it has a name, it has a thing, it lives beyond you and you just showing up and helping people, then that's the very first step, is having that signature pathway or that sort of packaged IP. However you want to think about it, you can call it whatever you want. We call it your signature pathway. It's really when you put a stake in the ground and say, this is how I help my ideal customer go from here to here. And you're consistently doing that. Now, a lot of times, once that happens and you have something physically packaged, you've called it your methodology, your framework, whatever name you come up with. For a lot of times, people are like, okay, here's what it is. And then they maybe mention it, and it becomes the structure for their signature experience that they create, so their signature offer, but they lose sight of it when they're talking out in the marketplace and trying to build their authority. They still get into the weeds of all of the things that they're an expert in. So they talk about this specific detail or this specific technique that they use, but they lose sight of the big picture IP that has packaged what they're doing into something that's tangible that people can touch and pick up and understand bigger than just you and what you do. And so this episode, I want to talk through that a little bit more because I see expert after expert after expert doing this, where maybe they've packaged their IP and they've given it a name, and maybe they've gone into AI and they've come up with some creative names for it, and they've packaged it, and they're starting to do some work around their IP. And it remains content focused. It remains like, this is how I do what I do, and this is what I do, and here's what it's called. But there's a bigger play here, and that is the sort of body of work. That is the thing that sets you apart from everyone else in the market. It becomes your authority. And the more tangible you can make your authority, the more you're able to grow and scale without your time, right? It's the difference between an expert who shows up and is like, trust me, I can help you, or buy my thing because I know that it's going to work. When you can stand and say, here is the step-by-step process that I take you through, and here's what it looks like, and here's what it, like, it's packaged into this thing, that becomes more tangible. That builds your authority faster than the, hey, just trust me, I'm going to do this, right? And then you go back and you figure out what you need to do in order to deliver. That's different than leading with this in the market. So one of the best ways that I can help people make this physical is to really think about it like it's a map or a game board. And you think about, so let's do the game board analogy, right? So when you are playing a game and you're playing a game that has pieces and a board and all the different things, so it's a physical game that you take out of a box, you have the game board with, various pieces or various things that you're supposed to do on it. And then all of the game elements, all of the directions, all of the places that you stop on the game board, all of that is something that's pre-created, right? So somebody doesn't just give you a box and say, here you go, figure out what what you want this to be. Figure out what goes inside of this box. No, it is a pre-created experience for the person who's purchasing the game. The mechanics have already been figured out. The physical aspects have been figured out. The strategy has been figured out. The pieces and how somebody goes from starting the game to ending the game. How do you win the game? What does that look like? What are all the pieces doing on the game board? All of that has already been created and put into the box. So when you're thinking about your signature pathway or packaging your IP, how do you physically create the experience so it goes in the box? Then when you're presenting it to someone and you're like, here it is in the box, right? Here's the physical aspect. It's called this, whatever your experience is called, whatever your pathway is called. And this is how you go from starting the game to ending the game, right? Here are all kind of the cool features and different things that are happening inside of the game, but you already have it defined. And so often when we package our expertise, we don't actually have it defined. We say that it's defined, or maybe we've gone into AI and make this into a nice framework title or whatever, but you haven't physically designed it yet for yourself, for your team, or for your customers. So when you're leading with it out in the market, I really want you to think about, how do you make it physical? And sometimes that's creating your own game board, right? You need that in order to make it physical. Your clients need that in order to visualize what it is that you're saying when you take them from point A to point B. And your team, if you have a team, they need that as well, right? How often has your team come to you to be like, and what is this? And how does this work? And, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I got this, right? This is my expertise. I got this. So we need to make it physical. We need to make it something that we lead with in the market. Because the difference between saying, hey, here is the signature pathway. Here's how I help you go from point A to point B in the fastest way, because I've already experienced it. I already have the game board. I've already designed it, is a totally different conversation than, hey, I have this approach that I use. It goes from here to here and blah, 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 blah. Just trust me and come into my thing and make it happen. Because that's when we all get distracted. And to be honest, sometimes people are like, do you really have a game board? Do you really have a game? Or is it something that you're just creating on the fly? And I was observing someone doing a session today who has a great methodology. They've defined it, they've written a book about it, they have a whole signature program, all of the different things that we talk about, and she didn't mention it once. She did not mention her overall signature methodology that she uses to take her ideal customer from point A to point B. So she can guarantee results. She can say to people, this is what you get once you've gone through my signature pathway, right? Once you've experienced my IP. She didn't even mention it, which tells me that while she has that and she's using her content to lead with it, she's still stuck in the details of all of the steps that are inside of it, which when somebody's making a buying decision, they don't necessarily need that yet. They need to know that you have a game board. So if she were to take her game board and say, you know what, we're just going to focus on this one square on my board, and I'm just going to talk to you about this one square. And she doesn't talk about the fact that it's on a game board. She doesn't talk about the fact that it's one part of an overall way to go from the problem to the solution, or to the starting line to the finish line, right? If you don't have the context for that little part, somebody isn't going to see that there's a bigger path that they or you or me or whoever the expert is has the solution, right? Because it's just like this little slice of depth that doesn't have the context around it. So I challenge you, if this is you and you have a tendency to really dive into your expertise and all of the details and all of the great things that you know, is to pull back, make sure you're always connecting everything that you're talking about to the bigger game board, to the bigger path and pathway that you have to take your customer on a journey from where they are to where they want to go. That is going to help you sell. That is going to help you build authority in the marketplace. That is going to help you actually help your customers. And it's also going to help you and your team stay out of the weeds so that you're always connecting it back to that bigger picture. So hopefully this helps you, and it helps you see that like the first piece isn't to create your offer. The first piece is not to create like the little tiny pieces within your expertise. The first step is really to show somebody that you are the authority because you have a packaged pathway that they can experience that helps them go from point A to point B faster than they can do on their own, right? Faster than they can do with somebody else who's like, just trust me, I'll do it for you, right? That pathway, that authority is going to help you go from where you are today to where you really want to go as a scalable expert, right? When you can unbundle your expertise from your time, that is when you can start to grow exponentially and help 10, 100, 1,000 customers without it burning you out or burning out your calendar. And you do that by really focusing on creating that physical, tangible aspect of your IP, of your signature pathway. And it's not creating your offer. It is not creating the thing that you want to sell to people or the container that you want to put them in. It's really just saying, here is how I take my expertise and help people consistently get from where they are today to where they want to go, right? That is step one, is just doing that, and has nothing to do with your offer, nothing to do with the container in which you're putting your experience or building out your experience. So really take that and look at that as the first step, is making your IP physical, making it tangible, making it into something that you could put in a box. Then talk about the box, and then after you talk about the box, then you can get into the pieces. But don't talk about the pieces until you have talked about the box and the actual pathway that you are most qualified as an expert to deliver to your ideal customer. All right, so hopefully this helped you today. Really, you may have to repeat this a couple of different times, but this is a critical difference between experts who are really truly scaling beyond their time and experts who are just stuck in the minutia, right? They have it, they say, oh yeah, well, that was easy. I packaged my IP, here it is. It's called the infinite scale method or the whatever method you want to call it, but they're not actually leading with it in the market. They're not using it as a way to describe how their expertise is producing a result for a customer. And so they're still getting lost in the details of what it is they do, how they do it, or what their expertise is around that little part and piece. So do that first. Really look at packaging it. Start talking about your methodology as a methodology, not of any of the steps and the frameworks and the details and the content. And don't try not to get into those weeds as you're starting to lead with your signature pathway. Really just dial that in. That's what's going to help you build authority and trust in the market, which is super, super important right now. And then you connect that to all of the ways that you actually will help somebody get to the transformation that they are hoping to have when they're working with you. So that is the very first piece. I'm going to stop there, but really think through that. If you need help with this, here's the deal. Like, it is completely normal for an expert to be tied into the details of what their expertise is, because of course you're an expert, right? Like, you know it better than everyone else, that it's hard to pull back and look at the forest from the trees. If that is you, just recognize that this is a normal part of this process and you may need some help getting there. We have different ways that you may be able to engage with us so we can help you sort of read that label while you're inside the bottle. So if you need that, in the show notes somewhere is a way to get in touch. Please feel free to reach out to myself and my team, and we are here for you. If you love this episode, give it a rating and send it out to your colleagues. We would love to have more listeners who are able to go from overwhelmed to infinitely scalable. All right, in the meantime, enjoy your week and practice really leading with your authority. Think about it as putting it into a box. Honestly, sometimes I do talk to my customers and I'm like, listen, go get a box. Doesn't matter what's in it, right? Go get a box and start to really put all of your pieces in the box and see what happens. Start to build that game board and put it on there physically so you can see the starting line and the finish line and all the ways that people go through and what they need to do to get from the starting line to the finish line. You can do that yourself and get to that point where you have a clear path. The way that you start leading in the market and with your customers will start to shift. All right, see you next week.